Hello, my name is Julie Knapp, and today my presentation is going to be on answering the question, should parents have different rules for their sons versus their daughters? As a parent of both a son and a daughter, my short answer to that is yes, absolutely. But since I can't sum up my whole presentation into that one little sentence, I will break down and give a little bit of support as to why I give such an answer. I will discuss the differences between sons and daughters and break down those reasons that we need to treat them differently into two main parts, expectations and safety. From when our children are little, we unknowingly teach them differently, how boys and girls are different, what their role is within a family and in society. Not to be sexist and not to be chauvinistic, but we tend to have our sons play with trucks and cars and roughhouse or play outside and play sports. It's probably most definitely done without any thought. It's just the way things were. It's the way our parents were with us. It's what we see. It's what we're sort of ingrained to think when it comes to our sons and daughters being different. But it really is sort of kind of setting them up later on in life too, for them to realize that boys and girls are different. Not that they would have an entire different set of rules, but of course they're going to be treated differently, and expectations are different between the genders. Just as our sons have this sort of predetermined set of expectations, if you will, not that they even understand that there's a difference or care, but you're more likely to see a little girl running around with a Barbie or a baby doll in her hand, playing tea party, braiding each other's hair, as opposed to a little boy, unless that little boy, of course, has been, is playing with little girls and has been talked into doing it. Most likely he is not, really concerned with, Barbie dolls and playing with, little bows in his hair. And this sort of sets them up for things later on in life as they get a little older and reach adolescence. They've already learned that there is a difference between the two of them. And as parents, of course, we treat our sons differently than our daughters because our sons are not our daughters. And we don't want them to be. And we're trying to show them, even if we're not really setting out and thinking about it, we're showing them in the way we treat them, in the way we behave, the expectations that boys have versus girls. Here we kind of take a side-by-side look at the differences between our sons and daughters. On the one side we have boys who tend to be more physical, which is why they will typically have an interest in sports or activities that keep them moving, like running and jumping. They are less emotional and actually will avoid situations where they're expected to console or comfort someone. They kind of have that feeling that they're supposed to be strong and tough. On the other side, we have girls, and girls tend to be less physical, which is why their types of games will usually involve pretend play, like house or teacher. Girls are more emotional than boys, and this leaves them needing comfort more often, which is what makes them good nurturers because they are loving and caring from the very beginning. These differences are crucial to understanding our sons and our daughters and the roles they will eventually play in our society and in life. I've talked a lot about expectations between the two genders, between our sons and daughters, and all of that sort of comes into full effect as they get older and they mature towards like their early teens, mid-teens. All of that really changes, and it's not just about expectations anymore, but now it becomes about safety, especially when it comes to our daughters. Our boys start to look like men. They're taller, they're stronger, they're starting to develop muscles, facial hair, their voices are changing. And our little girls are no longer little girls. Now they look like, young ladies or young women. They're developing. They're a little more concerned about their appearance, so they're wearing trendier clothes and doing their hair. And they begin to fill out and develop their shape. And this is where the concern comes in for parents as far as safety. When it comes to the difference between our sons and our daughters, I definitely think that we feel our daughters are a little more at risk than our sons are. In the beginning of my presentation, I gave a very adamant yes to this question because I consider myself to be a bit of an expert on this subject since I am the mother of a son and a daughter. It is something that is personal to me. I have always known that there was a difference between them. Obviously, they are individuals and they are different children. But I knew there was a difference because of their gender, because one was a boy and one was a girl. As they got older, their rules did start to change and became more individually based, and having a lot to do with the fact that one was my son and one was my daughter. I can tell you that I did catch a lot of flack from my daughter because I allowed my son to walk to high school, which was just a short walk around the corner. When he started high school, he would walk by himself in the morning. I was okay with that. When my daughter started high school this year, I did not allow her to walk to school by herself in the morning. She gets dropped off. That is very much because of the fact that he was a boy and she is a girl. At 15, they have very different bodies. My son looked more like a man at 15, and my daughter looks more like a woman. Unfortunately, this is about the age when we have to start considering the environment we live in, and we have to think about the dangers that our children are faced with. But I do tend to feel that our girls have different dangers and have a larger, broader range of dangers that they have to look out for. And this is where we start to think about sexual predators, or them being more susceptible to harm. I'm not going to apologize for feeling that way because I feel that you know that is my job to consider everybody and everyone as someone who could possibly be out to do harm for not just my children, but anyone that I care about. So when it does come to my children, I take that very seriously, and I have, the control over being able to change the rules when I feel it's necessary. But I don't want to say that I don't have concerns for my son. I do. I feel his safety um, is a little different. He probably needs more protection from himself rather than others. He tends to be a little more brave, um, thinks he's invincible. Teenage boys seem to think that they're tough, and they want to be seen as cool. So, when my son first got his license, I know when I was not in the car with him, tended to drive a little faster and take corners a little tighter. Um, Statistics show that boys are twice as likely to be involved in an accident as teenagers than girls are. And that is a real concern for me because um, that is not, something any of us ever want to have to, consider or be faced with, an accident or, God forbid, a fatal accident. So there are definitely concerns for safety for both our sons and our daughters. They just tend to be different, which is why our rules um, become different, especially when we reach those early to mid teens and even on into adulthood. I'm not sure that it ever changes, our concerns for their safety. I chose this subject because it was one that I have experience with and it is something that was personal for me. Whether you have a son or a daughter or both, or maybe you don't have any children yet, you must understand that there is a difference in how we raise our sons versus how we will raise our daughters. Not everything will be different. There will, of course, be general rules that apply to both, but at some point, there becomes a need to differ those rules between our sons and our daughters. This subject is not one that has a cookie cutter answer. Every child is different, and so is every situation. As parents, we do the best that we can for our children, regardless of their gender, but we must trust in ourselves and we must support one another. Being a parent is the most difficult job anyone will ever have, but I can tell you from personal experience, it's also the most rewarding. Thank you for watching my presentation.